Lee, so we've had you here for just under a week now. Thanks for coming to Madrid again.
Pleasure.
To present your space publication. I think we've met with somewhere north of 30 clients, both tenants and landlords, which is great. We've had different formats. We've met one-to-ones, we've done breakfast, we've watched some football with some clients, and initial reaction from you on how you've encountered the clients you've met and which pieces you think they found most interesting about the publication.
Aside from the football, which was great, reflections are that the messages have been really positively received. There's a real genuine interest in this marketplace around what occupiers how the occupiers are thinking, what they're planning to do. There's a little bit of, as there is around the world, anxiety around when some of that occupier activity might occur and what it might look like, but I think that's healthy. I think that gives us a great canvas and has given us a great canvas to talk a little bit about some of the changes that are afoot, and also to put to bed some of the myths and sensationalism that's been apparent in the market over the last 18 months, the death of the office narrative and all these things that we've become too familiar with but are so misplaced. We've been able to correct some of that and give people a real perspective, and I think it's been, and I hope it would have been widely appreciated.
I'm sure it has. Any difficult questions that you received before I give you one or two?
That's softening up the witness, right? Listen, I think there's always some questions about when. Timing is of the essence. The reality is I think we've got 6 months of a little bit more of a staccato rhythm to the occupational market before things really start to kick in. And I think they'll kick in quite quickly here in Spain because of the nature of your lease structures, which force action quicker than perhaps some other markets. There's always some interesting questions around CBD versus out of town and business park environments. I don't think either of those geographies are dead, but they need to heed the same warning, which is about vibrancy, environment, experience, amenity, irrespective of whether you're in an out-of-town business park or a prime office building. So yes, some difficult questions, but some interesting debate, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about locations, because that was going to be one of my questions for this chat. In Madrid, I think it's a slightly different case to London. We have, the situation is that most tenants are wanting to go downtown. Obviously back in the pandemic when we were stuck at home, there were different opinions, and some of us thought, including myself, that there was going to be a surge towards periphery, business parks, affordable rents. In the case of Madrid, much more modern buildings and open garden areas, etc. More space, generally. It's been quite the opposite. We've seen a net negative take-up, which isn't brilliant, but it's a fact. A lot of movement, but people downsizing, going downtown. The conundrum here is most of the buildings in the city centre are not ideal for grade A ESG approved spaces, which is within the report what we've seen a lot of occupiers can be looking for. So what's gonna give? Is it going to be occupiers giving into less quality space but recruiting talent in central Madrid areas, or is it going to be a further surge back out to the sticks?
I think the one fundamental message that comes out of your space is that people are not going to any longer compromise on quality. So I don't think it's the first of those directions of travel. I think what you're likely to get is, in the context of Madrid, for the reasons that you outlined, a little bit of a push outwards to where the quality is, where the amenity is, where the open spaces are, all the things that make an effective office location in a post-pandemic world. But I would also say that globally, the direction of travel is towards CBDs, and one of the challenges that's clearly at work here in Madrid is how do you get some of those older secondary pieces of stock into more productive use and appealing more strongly to customers. And I think that's a challenge for landlords that they're going to have to roll their sleeves up and get on with.
It's interesting. I'm going to politely agree to disagree with some of that. Certainly in our case, I wouldn't be able to recruit talent if we were to move outside town. and we would rather be in a decent grade B than telling younger members of staff who in many cases don't have a car, don't want a car, don't have a driving license, that instead of a 50-minute walk to the office, or people come on their bike or whatever, they've got an hour and a half, which is a bus and a tube. We'll see. We'll see if we'll see who wins the battle between the corporate that wants to be ESG friendly, whilst I completely agree offering amenities and public transport, and the young talent that we're all chasing after the same people.
The only thing I'd say on that is the ESG piece is a non-negotiable.
Yep.
We have 30 years to save the planet. The science is really clear on this, and we know that real estate is 40% of global carbon emissions. So, whether it happens today or whether it happens 3 years from now, all that's happening is the clock's ticking. The issue remains, and as a result, we are going to see occupiers starting to get closer into alignment with the investment community around the ESG agenda, and that will be another dynamic that will shape their decision making and ultimately where they locate or where they don't.
Yeah,
I would absolutely agree with you around talent, and what I think we might see and what we could potentially see in markets such as Madrid is sort of it's been much talked about in the marketplace. I don't know if it's evident here yet or not, but a sort of hub and spoke model, so that you can have that touchdown space in the centre. It may be highly refurbished grade B space, or it might be the available grade A that's out there, complemented by some space that's separate to that, that's a bit more decentralised and maybe at a lower cost point. You may see that. A lot of talk about hub and spoke at the start of the pandemic. We've not seen a huge amount of evidence of it, aside from some of the Asian markets, Singapore, Hong Kong. And actually where we have seen spokes being delivered in markets such as London, it's generally been delivered by flex operators who are providing space on almost a daily or a desk rate. So interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, agreed. I suppose another issue that another question mark that we were all wondering about in the pandemic is with regards to serviced offices. On the one hand, you've got WeWork and others suffering massively, handing space back, etc. On the other hand, given the uncertainty of the pandemic, we were all thinking that would be the easiest option back into the office. What have you seen so far?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that whenever you come out of a crisis, whether it's a political crisis, an economic crisis, or in this case a health-related crisis, time horizons and planning horizons shorten. And therefore you do, in many markets, not so much Spain, but in many markets you get a disjuncture between business planning horizons and lease commitments. I think you're in a fortunate position here with your lease structures that is probably not as an acute challenge, but globally it has been. And what we've consequently seen is a flight towards at least some of the corporate portfolio being put into flexible space, co-working space, service space, whatever you want to call it. I think the point, however, about co-working and the whole co-working revolution, I think there will be a demand for flex, but I think the way that flex is going to be delivered is fundamentally different. So historically, in the last cycle, with the WeWorks and others, generally the flex operators took leasing risk from landlords and then essentially sublet their space to a plethora of different occupiers, from one-man bands right through to increasingly corporates. I'm not sure that's the model that most are going to adopt going forward. I think what's likely to happen is conventional landlords, recognising they're missing a trick, are actually going to start creating structures whereby they work with the flex operators, but on an opco-propco basis, a bit like a hotel type model, where you end up with a management layer where essentially the co-working operation is run by an operator who knows what they're doing, creates the experience, creates the buzz, creates the environment that WeWork and others have been known for. But it's not a leasing arrangement. The lease is essentially for the landlord in a conventional way, albeit at a shorter duration. So I think that is a model that we're definitely going to see. The other thing I would say about the flex operators, love them or loathe them, is they have absolutely fundamentally changed the aesthetic of the office. If you think about the design dynamic that they brought into office space, it's been quite revolutionary, and I think the conventional landlords are now starting to pick up on that, and that is only good for occupiers.
You actually preempted my next question, because I've always thought the model of the co-workers should be more aligned with the hotel management agreement. Signing into a 15-year lease when the occupational market and the rental levels that occupiers are prepared to pay is cyclical, could potentially lead to problems, and it did. Apart from their finance model and their debt levels. So yeah, it makes sense that the landlord and the manager are aligned with regards to the cycles, just like in the case of the hotels.
I think what it also did though was the reason we went down that path, or we saw operators going down that path, was scale. Don't forget, WeWork had ambitions to scale at such an enormous rate that you weren't going to do it by having cosy relationships and building partnerships. You had to do it quickly, and that was the route. And they were well financed to be able to do that at the time. So it was a scale play, but I think actually what we've seen is a maturity. The fundamentals of the co-working model are sound. There is a demand for it. It's the way that you deliver it and the scale over which you deliver it that I think is under sort of review.